If you enjoy our content and think this is important material, the best compliment you can pay is by sharing this with your friends and family. This helps us out a lot. Also, if you enjoyed today's program, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We would love to hear from you. The Truth in My Days podcast is sponsored by the Truth in My Days ministry. Welcome to the Truth in My Days podcast, where we defend the Word of God against the challenges of men.
Hello all. Today we have Sonia interviewing John about literary dependence and the synoptic problem. This is looking at the process by which the gospel authors went about writing the gospel books. Given that the gospel books are so similar, particularly Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it raises the questions such as, do they copy each other? Are the similarities due to the divine inspiration from the Holy Spirit? What do the evangelical scholars say about this? Is there something wrong with their approach? John will be looking to answer these questions and more. We're continuing from the previous episode today. We hope you enjoy.
Well, but the point is, he's saying Matthew is trying to elevate the picture of Jesus, and he has Mark in front of him, so you really shouldn't find any to the contrary. But let's look at a couple. And this one's interesting because this comes from a debate. And I don't know how extensive the debate was because the two appeared on camera in a show called Faith Under Fire with Lee Strobel. And it was Mike Licona against Shabir Ali, and the topic was, is Jesus God? It was from the year 2004. And Licona says, of course, Jesus is God. Shabir says that where in the Bible, where in the New Testament does Jesus claim to be God? And Licona strangely responds. He says, well, there are many, many places, but maybe Shabir means the passages that can be historically verified, which seems to be a rather big and unjustified concession to the opponents of Christianity to say, like, we can't trust all of the New Testament, only the parts that are quote-unquote historically verified by liberal critical scholarship methods. But he brings this one up from Mark 14. He reads, again, the high priest asked him, saying to him, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? Jesus said, I am, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven. But Shabir replies, he says, that's in Mark 14, 61 to 64. But in Matthew, he didn't actually affirm it. Okay? In Mark, he says, I am. But in Matthew 26, it says, and the high priest answered and said to him, I put you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said to him, it is as you said.
Well, doesn't that mean the same thing?
It literally says, you say.
Oh, so he didn't affirm it.
Well, that would be, well, I think he did. I'd say like in English, I'd say you said it. I mean, that's not a denial at all.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's not as obvious.
It's not as obvious. And see, this is what Shabir is saying. Well, yeah, in Mark, he makes it clear. He says, I am. But in Luke, he's saying, you said it. Sorry, Matthew. Which one has the clear affirmation?
In Mark.
Which one doesn't?
Matthew.
But according to his logic, it should be Mark with the not clear affirmation and Matthew changing it to elevate Jesus. So why here? Why didn't Matthew look at the I am and just change it and make Jesus look lower? Possibly, anyway. Yeah, it doesn't fit in with Shabir's thesis that Matthew's the one changing, does it?
No.
And how about this then? Right at the very beginning, Mark 1:1. Read that for us.
The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God.
Right, read Matthew 1:1.
The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham.
Ooh,
So
interesting. What
no
difference?
reference to the Son of God.
Yeah, see, here's supposedly Matthew reading Mark, he's beginning with the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, and Matthew, instead of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, is Jesus Christ, the Son of David, the son of Abraham. Well, David and Abraham are cool people, but it's not God.
Yeah.
Certainly it looks here as if Matthew is copying, it looks like he lowered the picture of Jesus.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, why does Shabir not bring these up in his 8 points?
Because it doesn't support his point.
Exactly. That's cherry picking. Now, And most Shabir here could appeal to the critical text and say, well, the Son of God, that's not there. But it is. It's actually, even the critical text does include that. There's an effort on their part for a while to try to get rid of it, and it's, for obvious reasons. But they left it in there because the evidence for it is just too overwhelming. Son of God is missing in 3 manuscripts. It's okay. We probably got like over 1,600 manuscripts of Mark. It's missing in 3 of them, and that includes the Codex Sinaiticus, and even that was just uncorrected because scribe that went and corrected it and added it in. Besides that, it's missing in Codex Theta from the 9th century, which made other mistakes, and then Codex 28 from the 11th century. So there you go. That's it. It's there actually in the corrected Sinaiticus. It's there in Codex Vaticanus, which these people tell you is the best. It's there in Codex Alexandrinus. It's there in 99.8% of the manuscripts. So even the critical text people don't pretend it's not there. They do give it a C rating, which is ridiculous under the circumstances, but it's there. Okay, so you're now back to the problem of why did Matthew lower the picture of Jesus here? Which he didn't do it because Jesus is the Son of God and he is the Son of David. He is the Son of Abraham. He is fully God. He is fully man. But we see that Shabir's carefully constructed case that Matthew is elevating the picture of Jesus just falls apart when you see that the other passages where you see the opposite apparent phenomenon. The reality is Matthew, Mark, all the gospel writers teach the deity of Jesus. Some may emphasize it in one way, others emphasize it in another way, but they both have it. And so Shabir's case is based on cherry picking. It's based, as we've seen, on ignoring the context, not comparing to how often these terms are used, where they're used. And so his case doesn't stand, even if we accepted literary dependence, Markan priority, late dating. But without those, the argument wouldn't even get off the ground. It just would not even get off the ground.
Does he have any other arguments, or once you destroy those 8 points, that's it?
Well, as far as I know, for his attempt to argue that the gospel writers were elevating the picture of Jesus as time went on, I don't know that he can adduce any other evidence for it. This is the only one with which I'm familiar, and he's used it many times, and it's been effective. But again, if you do your homework, you find that it doesn't stand. So, to recap then, okay, we've seen these arguments based on literary dependence, on Markan priority, on late dating, on accepting the critical text as the best text, Nestle Aland. And all of these points are widely accepted by evangelical scholars, even though they're all bogus, as we've shown. So what do we have? What do we come down to here now? The case that will be made by the liberal scholars, and which is difficult to argue against if you're an evangelical, if you accept these points. The earliest sources for Jesus are what? They are Q, they are Mark, perhaps the Gospel of Thomas. Some will accept that, most won't accept that one. But what you have is the two or three earliest sources of Jesus' life. What his followers wanted to record had no resurrection in it. Okay? The 2 earliest, perhaps the 3 earliest. Liberals will say the 3 earliest. Most evangelicals will concede that the 2 earliest. And that becomes a problem, because then the liberals will say, well, if the earliest accounts of Jesus' life and teachings, whatever, didn't include a resurrection account, that means that this idea wasn't even important to them. It's not something they believed. It was not part of their belief system. Must have been added later. And how do you argue against that? If you're accepting literary dependence, Markan priority in the critical text, late dating, how do you argue against it?
Well, I suppose you could say, even if it wasn't recorded, it was important enough that apostles were dying for the belief.
You could say that. It becomes very thin, though, to point to the apostles dying for the belief while at the same time saying, but what did they believe? Look at their earliest writings. Whatever they're dying for wasn't a belief in a resurrection. Now, that doesn't make sense, of course, because there was a resurrection. But it becomes difficult to argue when you accept that the 2 earliest sources don't have it.
Don't today's scholars then go to some creed in a different New Testament book?
They do, and we'll talk about that on another program. We'll have to go into that in detail. The claim is that 1 Corinthians 15, 3-7 is a creed, an early creed, a pre-Pauline creed that Paul received after his conversion, and he passed on to the Corinthians. And wow, if we look at the timeline of Paul's life, he must have been taught that creed by the apostles in Jerusalem some 3 to 5 years after Jesus' resurrection, which proves that the church was already believing that Jesus rose from the dead 3 to 5 years after. It's a completely bogus argument, but as I say, we'll get into it in another series of programs. The key point here is that part of the reason I think they're willing to stop fighting about the authenticity of gospel books is because they believe now we have this creed, we don't need it. We really don't. And the quality of the defense of the gospel books goes down and down and down to this point that what we have seen is bad enough, but it actually gets worse. And the irony here is that it is now evangelical scholars who are leading the way, evangelical scholars who are making claims and arguments that undercut the reliability of the gospel books. It's the point now, it seems, that liberal scholars can sit back and relax as they watch the evangelical scholars lead the way in producing weapons to discredit the gospel accounts, and they're just going to stay silent and see how far these guys go, and then they will leap on what these evangelical scholars have put forth, and we will reap the whirlwind from that, because they're going to use it very effectively to undermine further the gospel accounts.
How so?
Well, let me ask you this. What kind of writing are the gospel books? What is their literary genre?
Well, they're history, aren't they? Narrative. Yeah, I always just thought that the evangelists, the gospel writers, just wanted to tell us who Jesus was, what he did, and so they wrote it down. Is that a genre?
Well, it could be. Someone suggested that the genre is gospel, as Mark put at the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ. But you're absolutely correct. This is what Christians have believed through the years. The gospel writers wanted to tell who Jesus was and what he did, and so they just wrote that down, took pen to paper, to papyrus, and wrote it down. But modern scholars have suddenly insisted that no, the gospel writers couldn't do that. Never mind that every literate person on the planet can do that. They could just pick up a piece of paper and a pen and write down, hey, this guy did this. But no, according to our scholars, the gospel writers couldn't. They didn't have the freedom to just pick up pen and paper and just write down about Jesus. No, they had to put their account into a genre, a literary genre.
What do you mean had to?
An existing literary genre.
Why do they have to?
Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but please join us for the next part tomorrow. Same time and same place. Thank you for listening to the Truth in My Days podcast with John Torse. If you like our content, please share this information with family and friends. It helps us a lot. We also would love to hear from you. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube by searching Truth in My Days as one word again. Truth in My Days as one word. No spaces in between. Or reach us by email at info@truthinmydays.com. You may also visit our website for more comprehensive material and to learn more about our ministry. Our website is truthinmydays.com.